Well, the movie Avengers: The Age of Ultron was a big change in the cinematic universe of Marvel. And how Civil War will respond to that?
It's a good question. Ultron, like some of the Marvel films that have preceded it, ended in a big battle in the third act in the movie, and in the destruction of Sokovia, basically in that film. And in that movie, it's sort of acknowledged that Ultron was basically accidentally created by Tony Stark. So in a lot of ways, he has a lot of culpability for what happened in that film. Civil War is very much about trying to hold the Avengers accountable for some of their mistakes and some of their collateral damage that's happened as they've been sort of fighting these, even though they've been fighting for the right cause and trying to defend the earth and trying to defend the people, they have caused damage. And in the film, we address the idea that they have caused some deaths. And they have to answer for that. The world's governments want them to answer for that. And it becomes a process of like, how do they answer for that? The movie is very much, how do they do that?
Yeah. Actually, in the comic book, the Civil War begins with the New Warriors, and the New Warriors doesn't exist yet
Right.
in the movies.
Yeah.
But we have seen in the trailers that Buck is gonna be a kind of guilty in this process. Is that correct? Is that the beginning of the Civil War?
It is. We do. Yes, exactly. Because this is the Marvel. The two distinctions are the Marvel universe is the universe as exists in the comic books, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the universe as it exists in the movies, and the two are related, but they're distinct from one another. So in the movies, sometimes we don't use a lot of the characters from the books. So we have to come up with different incidents or different characters, shift storylines to different characters. We do have an incident. It's sort of loosely inspired by the one that comes in the book, but it involves different characters and plays out in a different way. So I can tell you that it involves Captain America and Scarlet Witch and Black Widow and Falcon, but I don't want to go into it in too much detail to spoil it. But, yeah.
And this movie has been seen like a new Avengers movie because you have all this group together again, and it looks like a farewell for them. Is that correct? Do you agree?
It's a farewell for the group?
Yeah, because the next Avengers is going to be a little different from this.
Yeah,
this group,
right. The group is left in a very different place than they've been in at the end of this movie, which is complicated. It's hard to imagine how they're going to move forward from here. But that's a good place to be for storytelling.
Okay, there will be some new heroes in the story now. And how was the creation process of these characters?
The creation process. I mean, it's a very thorough process because these characters, whether it be Black Panther, or whoever, it's a big responsibility to introduce a new Marvel character. They have a huge fan base before they reach the movies, and then once they reach the movies, they're going to have that plus a whole lot more. So we take a long time in thinking about how we want to shade the characters for the films, because there's a lot of different inspiration that comes from the book. There's not always one interpretation of what a character is in the book. Sometimes there's several different ones, and we sort of take our time figuring out which one we gravitate to most, which one's most useful in the storytelling we have in mind. We do a lot of visual research with artists about what the characters can look like. Again, while we draw strong inspiration from what they look like in the books, it's like we like to sort of think about ways we innovate on that or bring their costumes into the world of the movie even more specifically. So it's a really thorough process that involves a lot of research and a lot of thought, and it's very exciting.
I bet you were a big fan of comics in the past, right?
Yeah. Yeah, not as big a fan as my brother. My brother was an even bigger fan of comics, but yeah. But yeah, we definitely grew up with comics and loved them, yeah.
Well, he's not here, so you can tell me some funny story about him, about comics.
Well, he was, it was sort of, he had when we were young, we had an uncle who was very much into comics, and my brother had a good relationship with him, and he kind of he was sort of like how we got into comics, but my brother was sort of the one who would always get the comics from my uncle, so he would kind of keep them and hoard them for himself, and I had to sort of figure out ways to like get under his bed and steal some. So yeah, but we grew up close, but we were always fighting as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
If you were a superhero, would you be in favor of the superhero registration?
That's a great question. You know, superhero registration is a political issue, and we like that. We like that. We like that dimension to the film. But like, really, what was important to us is to figure out reasons why each of these characters would either support it or not support it for very personal reasons, having to do with what was going on in their lives and how this political idea would complicate their lives, their personal lives, in terms of what they were looking for, what they wanted to do. So because if it's just politics, it can get dry. You know, we needed something that was very human in terms of what this meant to those people. So it's hard for me to answer the question because I'm not in the specifics of the narrative. You know what I mean? Like my stakes aren't sort of laid out there on a personal level. There's a good argument for both sides. I mean, there's a good argument. Tony Stark makes a very good argument for why the Avengers should submit to the Accords and sign up for the Accords and work in accordance with them. And Steve Rogers makes a very good argument about why they shouldn't, what the dangers are of it. So they're two very compelling arguments. And I think, hopefully the audience will be torn between the 2 points of view.
Do you think this movie is the most political from Marvel so far?
I think it is, even though Winter Soldier was very political as well. This movie, I think, is even more so because the thing about Winter Soldier was, you know, Captain America was in conflict with the government in the Winter Soldier and had to, even though he was a soldier who wanted to serve, he had to become subversive and go underground and fight the government in that film. But it was a somewhat easier choice for him to make because the government was corrupt. In this movie, the government's not corrupt. So it's, in a way, it's even more complicated to push against. It's more difficult for the characters to do that. So I think in a way it's more political because it's more real and more grounded and more complicated.
The next project after this one, it's gonna be the next two movies of the Avengers.
Yeah.
And you're gonna deal with the legacy of Joss Whedon. So how was that for you?
I mean, it's great. You know, we've loved the work that Joss has done, and it's so I think because we love it so much, it's easy for us to sort of connect to it and figure out how to carry it forward. But I would say, you know, our road to those Avenger movies very much came through the Captain America storyline, from Winter Soldier to Civil War. Civil War, Captain America Civil War very much sets the stage for what those movies are on a storytelling level. So I think we feel connected to those films, like we'll be able to segue into them off of the energy, because we are actually crafting the conflict that's going to begin those films, so to speak, in this movie.
Stay down. Final warning.
I could do this all day.